Khorne, the chaos god of war, skulls, rage, and most importantly, blood. You all know the line, fellas.
Blood for the blood god! Blood for the blood god! Blood for the blood god!
One of the most iconic war cries in the entire history of Warhammer 40k, screamed by everything from crazed cultists to berserking world eaters. And today, I'm starting a brand new miniseries, where I'm going to be power scaling all 4 chaos gods, breaking down just how powerful they really are in the current setting. So make sure you drop a like and comment which of the ruinous pantheon you would like to see next. Should I do Scandalous Slanesh, Noxious Nurgle, or the Purple Nurple himself, Tzeentch? By the end of the month, I will rank all of them from weakest to strongest based on their current strength in the 42nd millennia. But naturally, we have to start with the big red murder machine himself, Khorne.
How'd that get in there?
So I'll start by discussing who Khorne is, then I'll analyze his weapons, abilities, powers, and feats, before finally scaling him against the rest of the 40k universe. As always, let's chuck ourselves down the cow hole. It may be time to power scale, but because it's Mr. Khorne's big day, let's change up this channel a little bit. I want to hear you guys from the damn rooftops. Blood for the blood god, skulls for the skull throne. Khorne is the chaos god of anger, violence, hate, war, and bloodshed. He is essentially the living embodiment of rage made manifest. And that's the key thing to understand about Khorne. Every act of violence gives him power. It doesn't matter whether that blood was spilled by his followers, by his enemies, in glorious battle, or in a back alley murder. If violence happens, it feeds Khorne. This is seen in the 8th edition Chaos Demons Codex, which states, "He is wrath incarnate, the embodiment of a never-ending compulsion to dominate and destroy. It is his sole desire to drown the galaxy in a tide of slaughter, to conquer and kill every living thing until there is nothing left but spilled blood and shattered bone." So yeah, that's pretty much Khorne in a nutshell. He's a collection of death, war, slaughter, and destruction across both time and space, a god whose sole purpose is endless conflict. In fact, the 4th edition Chaos Demons Codex paints Khorne like this. The blood god is broad and muscular, with a face of a savage, snarling dog. Khorne wears heavy, overlapping plates of armor fashioned from brass and blackened iron. His every word is a growl of endless fury, and these roars of ire echo across his land. So the 4th edition Chaos Demons Codex does try to depict Khorne in a certain way, but this image is not exactly true, because like I said, Khorne is a concept made sentient, a metaphysical entity born from the emotions of all thinking beings. So yes, in a very literal sense, Khorne is rage, hatred, violence, bloodlust, and war given consciousness. That means Khorne is not tied to one species, one empire, or one conflict. As long as living beings wage war and spill blood, Khorne will endure. In many ways, trying to destroy Khorne would be like trying to destroy the very concept of violence itself, meaning it's practically impossible.
Oh, that's hot. That's hot.
Now before I move on, I do want to address the elephant in the room. Are the Chaos Gods truly sentient, or are they just concepts made manifest in the warp? Well folks, it's a pretty damn tricky question, because like a lot of things in Warhammer lore, it really depends on the author. Some writers treat the Chaos Gods more like fully thinking beings with personalities, motives, and desires, while others portray them as abstract concepts, vast metaphysical forces in the warp given shape by emotion and belief. Personally, I think they are sentient, but not in the way humans are, as there are several instances of the Chaos Gods interacting with reality, making decisions, and acting in ways that clearly suggest there is some kind of being, individual, or personality, well, whatever word you want to use, behind that immense power in the immaterium. They don't just exist as mindless energy, there's clearly something there that thinks, reacts, and exerts will. But at the same time, the Chaos Gods also appear to be forever bound by their own nature. They are ruled by restrictions that sentient beings can ignore. A mortal man, even one with the worst nature, the worst past, and the worst intentions, can change and become a better man. He can reject what he once was. The Chaos Gods, on the other hand, can't do that. Khorne can't allow for peace, Slaanesh can't exist without excess, Tzeentch can't stop plotting and scheming, and Nurgle can't stop embodying decay, stagnation, and the endless cycle of despair and rebirth. That's what makes them so strange. They seem to possess intelligence, personality, and even arrogance, but they are also forever shackled to the concepts that created them. They can think, they can act, and they can make decisions, but only within the confines of what they fundamentally are. And that also speaks to the sheer scale of Khorne's influence. He's not empowered by some tiny cult in the corner of the galaxy, or a handful of berserkers screaming into the void. Khorne feeds on conflict everywhere. Every planetary civil war, every orc wag, every Tyranid massacre, every space marine battle, every duel fought out of pride, every murder committed in hatred, every war waged by every species across the galaxy sends ripples into the warp that empowers him. Even those who despise chaos can unknowingly feed the blood god, simply by engaging in acts of violence. And this isn't limited to war in the current setting, as all conflicts across time and space fuel the blood god. In that sense, Khorne's reach is universal, and in a setting like Warhammer 40k, let's just say business is booming.
Here comes the money.
Here we go.
Money talk. Here comes the money.
Now, despite being a chaos god, Khorne actually despises sorcery and magic, viewing it as cowardly and dishonorable. Because of this, he has a deep hatred for Tzeentch, the chaos god of schemes and sorcery. But of course, Khorne hates Slaanesh even more than the bird wizard, as Khorne and Slaanesh represent opposite aspects of chaos. Khorne is brutality, bloodshed, and violence, while Slaanesh is excess, indulgence, and self-obsession. Khorne sees Slaanesh's self-indulgence sensuality as weak, decadent, and downright insulting. That said though, Khorne also embodies the warped aspects of martial honor, pride, bravery, and warrior's virtue, which some of his followers use to justify their massacres and slaughter. But Khorne's most devoted worshippers know the truth. Khorne cares not from where the blood flows, only that it flows. That's the main philosophy of the blood god. In addition, as a chaos god, Khorne resides within the warp, where he rules over his own demonic domain, which is elaborated on in the 4th edition Chaos Demons Codex. The Chaos Gods and their dominions are one, both are formed of the same warp energy. As a Chaos God gathers energy, it expands. Its corresponding influence on the warp around it broadens, and its territory in the realm of chaos grows. No two visions of these realms are ever the same, but all are founded upon the same basic themes and feelings. So as an extension of Khorne, his realm is built from the same emotions that birthed him: anger, violence, bloodletting, and of course, slaughter. His domain is specifically known as the Fortress of Khorne, and at the center of it all lies the infamous Brass Citadel. Here the blood god sits upon a mighty throne of brass atop a mountainous pile of bleached skulls surrounded by a vast lake of blood. Honestly, I'd love to visit this place. It's got the mountains for hikes, and it even has a huge pile of skulls. What's not to love? I think I'm gonna book my ticket right now.
A few moments later.
Blood for the blood god! Blood for the blood god! Blood!
But yes, these skulls are said to belong to all of those slain by Khorne's champions, and even Khorne's own fallen servants, ranging from human skulls to gigantic Tyranid skulls the size of hat blocks. And with every war, every battle, and every massacre, that mountain grows ever higher. But Khorne doesn't just sit around all day, because like the other Chaos Gods, he also takes part in the Great Game, the endless war between the Chaos Gods for supremacy over the Immaterium. As the 4th edition states, the realm of chaos is not merely the home of the Dark Gods, it is also their battlefield, the arena for the Chaos Gods' great game of supremacy. The Chaos Gods are constantly at war with one another, vying for power amid the immaterial planes. Despite their myriad differences, the great gods of chaos have the same goal: total domination. Such absolute power can't be shared, especially amongst gods. So Khorne, like his brothers, is attempting to gain control over the entire warp, in what is pretty much a gigantic game of Risk. But control over the warp can't be shared, and so the great game continues endlessly. And Khorne continues to fight his brothers in the hopes that one day he can claim their metaphysical skulls for the Skull Throne. And Khorne's followers reflect this philosophy. They are warriors above all else, whether they're berserk space marines, demons, gladiators, warlords, or blood-crazed cultists. In fact, Khorne's followers famously do not build temples. Why, you may ask? Because spending time building churches instead of killing people would probably just piss Khorne off. That's what makes worshipping Khorne so easy. All he needs you to do is spill blood. The blood of enemies, the blood of allies, and even one's own blood, since all of it feeds the blood god. Okay, sure, Betty. And Khorne has no shortage of legendary servants carrying out this bloody mission. For example, there's Angron, Demon Primarch of the World Eaters, and perhaps Khorne's greatest champion. Angrath, one of the mightiest bloodthirsters to ever exist. Kabanda, the greater demon who fought Sanguinius twice during the Horus Heresy. Skarbrand, the exiled bloodthirster who tried to sucker punch Khorne, which obviously did not go well. Doombreed, an ancient demon prince who was probably Genghis Khan. Skulltaker, Khorne's infamous herald and champion executioner. And the most famous of all of them, Khorne the Betrayer, perhaps the Blood God's most beloved mortal champion. So pretty much Khorne is not just some red, angry guy. He's a god whose throne is built from skulls, whose oceans are made of blood, and whose every heartbeat echoes with the promise of slaughter. Now that we've discussed who Khorne is, let's move on to discussing his abilities, weapons, and most importantly, his greatest feats across 40k. Let's start with Khorne's abilities, which we kinda touched on earlier. First off, Khorne is the embodiment of rage and conflict. Every battle, every war, and every fight across all of time, space, and reality empowers him. Which essentially means that if little Timmy is fighting little Johnny in ancient Greece over who took the cooler toga, that will empower Khorne. If Johnny and Wilmer are fighting over the last slice of cheese pizza and Chuck E. Cheese, that too empowers Khorne. I know those were horrific examples, but you get my point. This isn't just metaphorical either. The book Black Crusade, Tome of Blood reinforces this idea, stating, Khorne is conflict embodied to its most violent extreme. And thus Khorne is eternal and omnipresent. In all places and throughout every era, Khorne's influence has been felt by all. His intentions have had a hand in determining the outcome of seemingly every antagonistic confrontation, from a disagreement between two angry scribes to the galaxy-crushing wars of the Horus Heresy. Reaching out from his skull throne beyond the illusion of reality in which mortal beings live and die, he touches the greatest conflicts. He pushes them forward, encouraging their growth, driving men to take from their rivals that which they have not the strength to retain. Khorne stoked the fires of their hostility. Where expanding civilizations lay competing claims to newfound resources, he fans the flames of discord. As a brother grows jealous of his sibling's position, he heats the blood to the boiling point. Conflict is embraced as possessions are claimed, resources are seized, and brothers are slain. Through it all, blood flows to Khorne, and he laughs as his power grows. What this means in practice is that Khorne is an active metaphysical force driving war and conflict through his influence. Even something as small as jealousy between individuals or competition over resources is elevated into larger cycles of violence. Khorne essentially is the pressure behind war, constantly escalating minor disagreements into full-on slaughter. Khorne also exists across all realities and time, through the warp, as seen in White Dwarf. The realm of chaos reaches through all space and time, existing in an infinite number of realities. As such, Nurgle's servants are as likely to appear in the 41st millennia as they are in the mortal realms. This establishes two things: that the warp is not a single isolated dimension, but a layer of reality that overlaps all material universes and realities. Chaos influence bleeds into every reality where the warp exists. And secondly, this does indeed imply that the Chaos Gods exist in both 40k and the world of Age of Sigmar and fantasy. But yes, this statement from White Dwarf strongly suggests the idea that Khorne's influence is not linear or local, but that it's transdimensional in scope, affecting all realities where the warp exists and violence occurs.
Okay, we are cooked.
Yeah, there's a lot to swallow there. Now we're moving on to Khorne's actual abilities as a Chaos God. The first is that he and his siblings exist beyond the normal physical laws of the universe. This is actually how the warp is described in the 4th edition Chaos Demons Codex. The realm of chaos is a place of dreams and nightmares, where cause need not follow effect within its bounds. Anything is possible. Here, there are no physical laws akin to those that dominate the mortal world. Within its confines, hope and fears become real, and reality is reborn as fevered hallucination. Gravity, shape, space, and reason all are in flux and utterly mutable to the will of the Chaos Gods. That means that within his domain, Khorne has absolute dominion over reality itself. Physics, logic, and causality do not apply in the same way that they do in the material universe. Khorne can simply shape, expand, and alter his domain at will, reshaping the very structure of his realm according to his will and nature. This is further emphasized in the same codex, which discusses Khorne's influence over the warp. In the very direst of need, when his armies are overwhelmed and his citadel beset, Khorne rises from his throne, his armored footsteps shaking the realm of chaos to its core. So Khorne is able to affect the entire warp simply by getting off his chair. Either he's incredibly powerful, or my boy Khorne needs to exercise a little bit more. This is also seen in the 10th edition Chaos Demons Codex, which states, when the gods do battle, the Immaterium shakes and warp storms rage across the galaxy. Within the realm of chaos, hordes of demons are sent forth to do their creator's bidding, and the lands of the gods strain and heave at each other in physical assault. So here we see that not only Khorne, but the other 3 Chaos Gods are able to shake the warp and cause warp storms to erupt across the galaxy, simply by fighting. And it's not like they're doing this on purpose. It's literally because they're so powerful that by merely fighting, they are causing reality to flux, warp storms to form, and the Immaterium to shudder. Time for another warp storm. Yes, dear. Now, since Khorne is a metaphysical being, he technically cannot operate within the physical world. This is where his greater and lesser demons come in, as he can project avatars into the material universe. But these manifestations are still constrained by the rules of reality. Even so, he can still create entire legions of demons, each bloodletter, skulltaker, or bloodthirster being a fragment of his essence given independent form. The Chaos Gods are not alone in warp space. They have created servants from their own essence, the creatures mortals call demons. Demons are beings of a somewhat different nature to their masters, and are the most numerous of the warp's inhabitants. A demon is born when a Chaos God expends a portion of its power to create a separate being. This power binds a collection of senses, thoughts, and purposes together, creating a personality and consciousness that can move within the warp. The Chaos Gods can reclaim the independence it has given to its minions at any time. This ensures their continuing loyalty, and means although some wayward demons may not act entirely in accordance with their master's commands, even the greatest of them would not dare outright defiance. This is one of the few ways that the Chaos Gods can interact with the physical world, as their presence is so large that they have to split themselves into smaller pieces with different personalities and nature to infiltrate the material world, allowing them to accomplish their goals and missions, even while still stuck behind the barrier between the material and immaterial realms. Khorne also has the ability to consume souls, absorbing their essence to increase his own power. This is seen across Chaos lore, including events such as Slaanesh consuming the entire Eldar pantheon and billions of Eldari souls, temporarily elevating Slaanesh to the #1 spot amongst the ruinous pantheon. This demonstrates that Chaos Gods scale in power through accumulated psychic and soul-based energy. Say for example Tzeentch's greatest scheme, which involved the destruction of hundreds of planets across the galaxy through a very elaborate, complex, and elongated plan, then Tzeentch would become incredibly powerful at that moment in time. Another good example would be, say, Nurgle infecting half of the galaxy with one of his plagues. This would kill billions, if not trillions, of beings, and since Nurgle was the reason behind this, he would devour all of the deceased souls. This in turn would greatly buff him, most likely making him the greatest Chaos God at that current time. The same applies to the rest of the Ruinous Pantheon. I'm not going to spoil anything, but imagine how strong Khorne is in the current setting, as war has engulfed the entire galaxy and billions wage war across the universe. Finally, Khorne's influence extends into something far more abstract, the Skein, the metaphysical web of fate, causality, and potential timelines. While often associated with foresight and psychic perception, the warp inherently contains overlapping realities of possible futures. It is a structure where past, present, and countless futures exist as overlapping threads rather than a single fixed timeline. As Path of Seer describes, it is a state beneath physical reality itself, a place of pure mind and potential, where being, passing, and life emerge before form takes shape. Did you catch that potential part? Damn, it sounds like Ferrus Manus's favorite place in the world. In this sense, the Skein is not just the future, but the underlining pattern of reality and possibility, a web of infinite branching outcomes that psychic beings can perceive as strands or threads. Eldar seers often read these threads to navigate fate, but the warp's nature means those futures are unstable, splintering into ever-expanding futures that had never come to pass, showing that the Skein is a contested and fluid structure rather than a fixed destiny. So what exactly do I mean when the Chaos Gods can manipulate the Skein? Well, a good way to imagine it is as though the Chaos Gods have strings attached to the Skein. They can pull, twist, and strain each thread to nudge events towards outcomes that favor them. But they can't simply rewrite fate at will. Every movement is resisted by the Skein's own complexity and by rival gods, demons, and other powerful warp entities, all contesting for influence over the same threads. Khorne specifically probably exerts influence by amplifying the currents of rage, bloodshed, and violence already present in the Skein, making futures that culminate in war and slaughter more likely while suppressing the threads that don't. He can't wholly redirect the course of fate, but he can alter its flow, like forcing a river into certain channels through his overwhelming power and presence. In an era defined by constant mass death and psychic violence, this gives Khorne immense leverage when it comes to manipulating the Skein. He feeds on the energy generated by these outcomes, growing stronger from the souls and bloodshed tied to them, and in turn gains greater ability to strain the Skein towards more conflict and more war, creating a self-reinforcing cycle of war, death, and metaphysical domination.
Ring, ring. Who is it? Destiny? I've been expecting your call.
Moving on from his abilities, we next need to talk about the Blood God's weapon. Across 40k canon, Khorne wields a legendary, reality-splitting greatsword, most commonly known as Woebringer, also referred to as Warmaker or the End of All Things, which in my opinion is way cooler. This weapon is incredibly powerful, which is, kind of a go figure. As the 6th edition Chaos Demons Codex states, at Khorne's side rests a great two-handed sword, a legendary blade capable of laying waste to the substance of worlds with a single blow. This fell weapon is known by various names to the races of the galaxy, including Woebringer, Warmaker, and the End of all things. It is said that when Khorne takes up his sword, a single sweep can cut through reality itself, allowing Khorne's demonic legions to spill forth. So his weapon can literally tear holes in reality, effectively acting as both a world ender and a gateway for his demonic legions to flood into existence. This blade is also implied to have slain lesser warp entities and gods, according to the 8th edition Chaos Demons Codex. But unfortunately for both me and you, this is the only weapon the Big Red Machine wields, which I guess makes sense, since what else do you need when your sword can destroy planets and reality? But I did think he'd at least have a cool morning star or something. I just think they're real neat.
I just think they're neat.
Finally, we get to his feats. First off, Khorne is a main participant in the Great Game, the eternal war between the Chaos Gods for dominance over the warp. This is important because participation alone is kind of its own feat. The Great Game is not a casual game of Monopoly. It is a constantly shifting metaphysical war between beings who embody fundamental concepts of our reality. So if Khorne can battle and at least stalemate the other 3 Chaos Gods, that shows that Khorne is definitely one of the strongest beings in the entire setting, especially since Tzeentch, Slaanesh, and Nurgle should have similar abilities when it comes to reality, skiing, and warp manipulation. Now, on the topic of the Great Game, say if we paused it for one moment, like someone called a timeout in the 4th quarter, allowing the Chaos Gods to finally unite against the material world. What would happen? Well, according to the 8th edition Chaos Demons Codex, if this were to happen, then reality would absolutely be cooked. Had the Chaos Gods worked in unison in the wake of that terrible event, it is doubtless that real space would have been utterly consumed by the sprawling madness of the warp. Yet true to their nature, the Dark Brothers saw the anarchy as an opportunity to fulfill their own agendas, to kill, to change, to pollute, to bathe in excess. So divided, they are unable to overcome the fierce resistance of the galaxy's inhabitants. For context, the text is talking about the formation of the Great Rift, which split the Imperium in two. So the text is clearly stating that if the Chaos Gods had decided to lock in, they could have destroyed reality. This further implies that Khorne, as well as the other 3 Chaos Gods, are able to destroy entire realities. Even though I assume you already knew that, it's still a pretty damn cool statement. Too bad that's never gonna happen. The Chaos Gods are kinda the ultimate potential man. They are always stated to be able to destroy realities, universes, and planets, but it's quite rare to actually see them do this on page. Watch out, Ferrus Manus, there's a new potential man on the block, and he's coming for your job. Another one of Khorne's greatest feats comes from the 6th edition Chaos Demons Codex, when Khorne in his base state fought Prime Tzeentch, who was said to dominate all of creation, and defeated him alongside Slaanesh and Nurgle. There was a time when Tzeentch ruled supreme over the other gods of chaos, his powers vastly superior than those of any of the 4, or so maintain his followers. In their envy and arrogance, the other gods set aside their differences and joined forces to overthrow the Grand Sorcerer. The entire universe was devastated, and the cataclysmic conflict that followed. During the final battle, fearing that the combined armies of the other 3 powers would eventually defeat him and take his crystal staff, symbol of his dominion and mightiest tool of power, Tzeentch opted for a more cautious tactic. The Great Schemer yielded, breaking his own crystal staff as a token of surrender. What makes this feat so important is how powerful Tzeentch is at that current moment. In this state, he is not a chaos god among equals, but is described as ruling supreme over the warp itself, stated to be vastly exceeding the other chaos gods. In fact, it's later remarked in that same codex that if Tzeentch were able to gain that power again, he would rule over all creation. In other words, this is a prime or ascendant form of Tzeentch, a version of the Architect of Fate that sits at the very top of the entire setting, arguably second only to the Dark King. So against that, the fact that the other Chaos Gods, including Khorne, are not only able to contend with him, but also overthrow him, is an enormous scaling feat. Khorne also fights Skarbrand, or I don't even know if the word fight is the right word for it.
I'm gonna
Smack the goofy out you.
As in the 4th edition Chaos Demons Codex, Skarbrand attempts to usurp Khorne, and let's just say it doesn't go well for him. Tzeentch noted the prowess of Khorne's favorite slaughterer, and with whispers fueled Skarbrand's anger. With constant taunting, Tzeentch goaded Skarbrand into ever greater acts of bloodletting, until Skarbrand was a burning figure of incandescent fury. So great did Skarbrand's rage grow that when Khorne's attention was elsewhere, Skarbrand took up his axe and struck a blow against the Blood God. Though powerful enough to have felled an army, Skarbrand's strike only opened a small chink in the armor of the Blood God and attracted the desolate gaze of Khorne. Filled with an anger that made Skarbrand's own rage seem meek, Khorne snatched up the wayward bloodthirster in his clawed grip. Bellowing damning curses, Khorne choked Skarbrand until all vestige of personality and thought had been driven out, leaving only the flaming ire that had powered that fateful axe stroke. Khorne dragged Skarbrand to the pinnacle of the brass citadel and held aloft the bloodthirster for all to see, as an example to all who dared challenge the Blood God's might. Khorne hurled Skarbrand across the realm of chaos. For 8 days and nights, Skarbrand blazed a trail of fiery destruction across the realm of the gods, leaving a scorched waste in his wake. As a rage-filled meteor, he plunged down, carving a great canyon with his landing, his wings torn to shreds by the force of the impact. This is both a durability and strength feat on a conceptual level, because Skarbrand is one of Khorne's most powerful demon champions. And at that specific time, when he tried to sucker punch Khorne, he was stated to be the strongest bloodthirster at his command. And the fact that Khorne easily overpowers and utterly breaks Skarbrand, even taking a strike that he wasn't prepared for, that was said to be able to destroy an army. And all it does is open a chink in his armor, showing that even his greatest servants are still infinitely beneath him. But it gets even better, folks, because according to that same codex, Khorne has also fought another chaos god, Slaanesh. During the eternal wrangling and wars that make up the great game, it came about that Tzeentch tricked Slaanesh into battling with Khorne. The Changer of Ways lured Slaanesh into a cause he could not hope to achieve, and Slaanesh was defeated and humiliated. This is a pretty damn crazy feat, because not only did Khorne defeat Slaanesh, but the text clearly states that Khorne humiliated Slaanesh, implying that he may have low-diffed, or dare I say even no-diffed, another Chaos God.
But you can't do this to me.
You know how much I sacrificed?
Which is just simply wowzers. But yes, I will admit, most if not all of these feats come within the warp. And you're probably wondering if Khorne even has a feat within the physical world. Well folks, he does have one, specifically from Ark of Omens Angron, when Khorne finally lets loose in the material world. This comes after Demon Primarch Angron destroys a beacon reflecting the Astronomicon's light. And after doing so, Khorne rises from his skull throne and channels his power through his chosen champion, striking with what is described as a god-level attack. And the consequences for the Imperium are extreme. An entire moon is shattered, killing everything on it, which is billions of lives. Then Khorne unleashes what is effectively the Rage virus from 28 days later across the entire star system, known in 40k as a murder curse, causing every Imperial force within the system, which includes guardsmen, navy officers, sisters of battle, Adeptus Mechanicus adepts, titans, ships, priests, and even elements of the Inquisition into frothing Khorne worshippers, all in the blink of an eye. Only the Custodians, Grey Knights, and Sisters of Silence are able to resist its effect. But if you thought that was it, well, it only gets worse from there, as the corruption infects the entire Crusade fleet. For context, the Indominus Crusade fleets are described as rivaling the legions of old in sheer size and firepower, and the Imperium only fields a limited number. So the result is terrible for the Imperium, as the entire fleet is lost and fallen to Khorne. If we do the math here, that is anywhere between 1 to 5% of the Imperium's active military strength being corrupted or destroyed in a single act of divine intervention. So in one strike, Khorne effectively destroys a moon, corrupts a full star system, collapses an entire Crusade fleet, converts or destroys trillions of soldiers, and permanently weakens the Imperium at a strategic level. So to summarize, Khorne's abilities center on the conceptual embodiment of violence and omnipresent influence over all conflict, empowering him constantly across reality and time and space. His weapon, Woebringer, is a reality-cutting divine blade that is able to tear open both space and reality, allowing demon incursions to occur. His feats range from slaying lesser warp gods to dominating other chaos gods, and even destroying moons in real space. Now that we've broken down Khorne's abilities, weapons, and feats, we can finally answer the golden question. Where exactly does he scale compared to the rest of the 40k universe? Before we talk about Papa Khorne, we need to first lay out a cow's power pyramid, with the same scaling tiers as always. At the bottom, we've got the Chapter Master tier, where you'll find your average Space Marine Chapter Masters, Tau Commanders, and Orc War Bosses. Above that is the Enhanced tier, where you'll find Grey Knights, Adeptus Custodes, and most Demon Princes, depending on how empowered they are by the Chaos Gods. Next up is the Low Primarch tier. Here we find Avatars of Cain, most Name Greater Demons, and the weaker, unaltered, unamped base Primarchs, like Alfarius, Omegon, Lorgar, and Gilliman. Then we hit the High Primarch tier, where we can find the absolute monsters among the base Primarchs. Beings like Sanguinius, the Lion, Horus Lubercal, Conrad Kurz, and Lehman Russ. The Primarchs who consistently outperform their brothers and represent the pinnacle of what a base Primarch can realistically achieve. After that comes the Planetary tier, which includes Catan Shards and the Demon Primarchs. These are beings that can threaten or destroy entire worlds. Above that is the Cosmic tier, which includes the Silent King and the Emperor in his 30k form. These are beings who can affect entire star systems. And finally, at the very top of the 40k universe, we have the Multiversal tier. This is where you find the Emperor on the Golden Throne, God Emperor Horus, and the full Catan, like the Nightbringer or the Void Dragon. These are beings whose power and influence stretch beyond a single reality, touching the very structure of existence itself. And now, with all of that in mind, it's time to talk about Big Daddy Khorne. Now I'm going to admit, compared to my other How Powerful videos, where it does take a minute to pinpoint exactly where they are on my pyramid, Khorne and the other Chaos Gods are going to be far simpler, because right off the bat, we kind of already know where he's going to end up. Since he's a Chaos God with blatant reality warping abilities, by default, that kind of places him in the Multiversal tier, as the Chaos Gods sit above basically everything in the entire setting. So in the grand scale of things, Khorne scales above everything in the Chapter Master, Enhanced, Primarch, Planetary, and Cosmic tiers. Even though technically speaking, the Emperor in 30k did manage to wound the Chaos God during the End and the Death Part 3, when he utterly destroyed Horus's body and soul. But I wouldn't really call that a pure Khorne vs Emperor fight. It's more of Khorne buffing Horus and Horus acting as the vessel. You could also argue that version of the Emperor was operating inside a massive warp bubble projected by God Emperor Horus, meaning the Emperor himself was also heavily amped beyond his normal baseline, allowing him to achieve that outcome. but I won't get too into that in this video because I plan on dissecting the Emperor vs. Horus in a different video. But yes, Khorne sits comfortably above everyone below the multiversal tier. Next, we need to discuss where specifically he sits, since we're dealing with entities in this tier like the Throne-bound Emperor, God Emperor Horus, the other Chaos Gods, and the full-on Catan. Truthfully speaking, I think Papa Khorne scales above the Emperor on the Golden Throne and God Emperor Horus. We do know that the Emperor in 40k managed to wound Nurgle in his own domain, but since we don't have consistent evidence that the Emperor can replicate or surpass that level of metaphysical attack, I'm going to give Khorne the edge here. Then we have God Emperor Horus, who's also incredibly powerful. Just like the Emperor, he can manipulate time, space, reality, and even the skein as well. But Horus doesn't fully understand his own abilities, and often feels like a child wielding the raw power to remake the universe. His only real limitation is his imagination and his lack of knowledge. And during his fight against the Emperor in the End and the Death Part 3, they fight across thousands of timelines, memories, and realities all at once. You behold them all, every facet of this psychic duel, occurring simultaneously. And some, like Mohenjo-Daro, where you spill his blood on that mound, where that great city is yet to be built, or Kasar Undak on Cadia, where you pin him to a Nochlith pylon with your talon. You are clearly winning. And others, like Garo's Scrap World, where he herds a wog of Xenos brutes with his will to rend you limb from limb. Or Tiska, where Spark from his mind has just set you on fire. He has the upper hand. So as you can see, the Emperor and Horus are literally fighting across multiple realities, timelines, and planets. But even so, while Horus is a peak overloaded expression of chaos in the material world, he is only a droplet of the Chaos God's true power. So, say if he were to go up against Khorne in the Warp, he would definitely lose that fight. Since Khorne is the literal concept of blood, rage, and war across all time and space, and Horus is just some bald Primarch with a lot of warp juice stuffed up his butt.
What did he say?
Next, we have the Chaos Pantheon. But since I'll be doing a whole video ranking all 4 of the Chaos Gods from weakest to strongest, it's probably not a great idea to spoil that entire video concept by ranking the Chaos Gods right now. So I'm just going to leave it a mystery for now until we finally cover that video at the end of this mini-series. But now we come to the hardest scaling debate of this entire video. Khorne versus the full-on Catan. For those who somehow forgot how powerful the fully formed Catan are, well guys, they're kind of the gods of the physical universe. And so they have complete control over reality, time, and space within the physical universe, as seen in the 8th edition Necron Codex. Gorged on the life force of the Necron tier, the empowered Catan were near unstoppable and unleashed forces beyond comprehension. Planets were razed, suns extinguished, and whole systems devoured by black holes called into being by the reality warping powers of the Star Gods. And these abilities seem to have no upper limit. They can erase beings from existence entirely and are masters of time and space, able to cast their foes outside or before time, as seen in the same codex, mutating the flow of causation and remolding the temporal stream of the space-time continuum. The Catan Shard casts its foe back into the darkness from before time was time. And remember, that's only a shard, a fragment of their true form. A full Catan would be vastly beyond even that. They're also capable of manipulating causality and the skein as well, meaning they can influence the past, present, and future. While they can't directly interact with the warp, they can affect its boundaries and its influence on reality. They can also create realities and even galaxies, as seen in Gods of Mars. They sought to connect all the universe with stepping stones, newly wrought galaxies they would build from the raw materials scattered by the creation of space-time itself. This is further reinforced in the Nightbringer prologue. Galaxies had lived and died by their master's command, while stellar realms were extinguished for their pleasure and entire races brought into existence as their playthings. So by feats alone, the Catan sit at the absolute top of the material realm in 40k. They are the setting's ultimate expression of physics taken to godlike extremes. But if we compare them to Khorne, it's not a simple who wins in a fight scenario, because technically they exist in completely different layers of reality. The Catan are fundamentally bound to the materium, while chaos exists in the warp and the warp alone. One governs the rules of reality like gravity or time, while the other governs the metaphysical reflection of thought, emotion, and existence. They are like a lion and a shark, both apex predators, but neither can truly interact with the other. For them to properly fight, you would need either a catastrophic collapse of the barrier between reality and the warp, or an extreme metaphysical convergence that does not naturally occur in the setting. To add to that, the fully formed Catan are also shattered in the current setting, except for maybe the outsider who is supposedly still out there hiding somewhere. And that's kinda why a clean one-to-one comparison just doesn't really work. Yes, you can stack feats, statements, and victories against other absurdly powerful entities and try to build a rough scaling chain from that, but once you start comparing Chaos Gods to Catan, things just get real messy real fast, because they are playing by fundamentally different rules. So no, I know right, I'm saying no, I don't think there's a clear answer here, and trying to force one turns into a power scaling nightmare. But here's the part that does matter. The full Catan, for the most part, aren't around, like I just said. They were shattered into fragments of their former selves, broken by the Necrons into pieces of godhood. So if we're talking about the current setting and the current setting alone, not the hypothetical prime versions across all of time, yes, Khorne probably sits at the very top of the multiversal tier, alongside his fellow siblings, who I have not ranked yet. Man, I am so happy that I totally didn't write a full section on attempting to scale Khorne versus the Catan, and then definitely didn't realize that it made no sense a day in, and totally did not rewrite the entire section. Sheesh, wouldn't that have been a waste of time, fellas? Now I want to hear from you guys. Which Chaos God would you like to see next? Do we go full Plague mode with Papa Nurgle, Galaxy Brain Madness with Tzeentch, or go crazy with Ketamine with Slaanesh? Let me know down in the comments. I will say that when I do rank them, it's going to be super gosh darn hard, and I'm already dreading doing it. This is mainly due to the fact that the Chaos Gods exist in the warp where time technically doesn't exist, and the fact that their powers fluctuate so gosh darn much. So it's going to be a mix of power scaling and, well, guesstimating, which I'm sure won't be controversial and cause an uproar. But that does it for this video. As always, a massive thank you to my Patreon and YouTube members. Imposse Paul, Tyler Pick 7, Ritter S, Musty, Keydri, Seth Capizilla, Lag, Cunning Karkle, Caleb White, Jack Roar, Anish Chatterjee, Dinkleberry, and Michael Skipper 7277. I appreciate you guys a lot, and your support means the world. But that's gonna do it for this video on Papa Khorne. The comment section will determine which Chaos God we tackle next. As always, my beloved herd, stay milked, and I'll see you all real soon.